reading Get a Snack at 4 a.m. fanfics made by random people. I'm choosing random stories that has something, at least something to do with Get a Snack at 4 a.m. Including the ones that ship Cashier and the Reader, which, I ain't a very big fan of, but what type of a choice do I really have? There's like, I'm looking at one of the stories right now. I'm not very pleased, but okay. Yep. I see a lot of Cashier and Reader things, which I'm not very excited about, but do I really have a chance? Alright. Okay. Let me just click on a random story. Wait, no, I was reading in the middle of reading this, and I came up with the idea of getting this. What really intrigued me was this. I was confused, so I was like, it says gone wrong, so let's try it. Also, shout out to this person. Okay, full story. And there's a side note, I wrote this originally for AO3, so it's written in a more AO3 style format. And no, I didn't steal it, I just wrote it. Just wanted a poster here for fun, because not a lot of Get a Snack at 4 a.m. and Get a Snack at 4 a.m. snack core fans use AO3. As hinted by the 41. As I'm putting this up, stories on here, so heavily recommend using AO3 if you haven't. Wait, what even is AO3? Sorry, I don't know what AO3 is. I'm an idiot. I'm just gonna say this, but like this. 1. I just want a snack. Oh boy, 4 a.m. Must be the time for a snack. Player wiped their eyes sleepily, crawling out of bed, or more like falling out of bed, maybe dragging themselves out of it. But that's not important here. What's important is that players getting food, and that requires our full attention. They grab their beat-up red cap off their nightstand and tuck their mess of hair under it, though some still found its way out of the cap. They opened their bedroom door and walked out the living room. Something seemed off. They couldn't put their finger on it, so they moved over the door, grabbing their zip-up hoodie and tossing it on before opening the door, and to be met with a corrupt world. Oh boy. Players sighed, looking to see if they could make their way to the store with the gravity of the world completely messed up, things floating everywhere and broken up. They shut the door and stepped into the world, which hovered underneath them. They made their way to a generic convenience store, seeing Dummy and Cashier inside discussing something that they approached. The bell rang as Player opened the door and waved awkwardly to the other two. "Oh, hi, Player," Dummy said, waving back and smiling. Player smiled back, walking in. "Any idea what's going on now?" Cashier asked, not bothering to greet the younger. Cashier shook their head and shrugged their shoulders, their hair bouncing. Yeah. Okay. Cashier looked outside, slightly worried. The world couldn't have reached another data limit, right? Player shook their head. "I don't know, maybe," Dummy said, walking over to the window and peering out. The world practically held together by duct tape. Anything would have happened. I suppose that's true. The three sat in silence for a bit, tension obvious, everybody a bit worried. Should we get Kuyu and Orbi? They might know what's happening, Cashier suggested, looking at Dummy and Player. "Well, none of us know. They seem to be the only ones who would know," Dummy replied. The two looked at Player, who shrugged, indicating that they didn't really know what else they could do other than call their geometric friends. Cashier looked around, seeing if there was any way to create a disturbance and strong enough to summon them. Okay, well, we need to make a disturbance. Caillou and Orby probably haven't noticed our world is falling apart yet, Cashew said, looking up around his beaten shop. Well, maybe we can combine all the endings again? Dummy suggested. That just break the world again, break the game again, Dummy. Oh yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Cashew snorted. Player grabbed the orange juice from the shelf and tugged at Cashew's shirt, pointing to their house. What would orange juice do? They gestured for their two friends to follow them and ran out the door. Gravity was almost entirely gone. They didn't dot on the ground like before. They floated. The three reached Player's house and went inside, navigating with some difficulty, given there's nothing keeping the house down unlike the store. They reached the bathroom, Player quickly popping in and grabbing the toothpaste, bringing it out. Orange juice and toothpaste. Cashier face-palmed. Kid, you're dumb, but you can't be that dumb. Player grumbled, going back into the bathroom and coming out with a sword now instead. Cashier and Dummy looked at the sword, both in confusion and fear. How did you get that sword? Actually, no, don't answer that. I don't want to know. Dummy spoke, puzzled. Player grinned. Did I read that? Why do I keep on doing that? Okay. And what are you even going to do with the sword? It can't make a disturbance. Player asked. In all honesty, it was a good question. Player led the two in their breakfast machine, inserting the sword. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's what. I actually read that wrong. They grabbed a Robux bill from their fridge and asked why. When asked why they kept money in their fridge, they shrugged, simply inserting in the breakfast machine and turning it on. It sparked and cracked, glowing different colors. Is it supposed to do that? And it seemed the disturbance was long enough because Caillou appeared right in front of the machine as it sparked. You really thought it'd be a good idea to put two non-food items into a food machine? She lectured. Yeah, we need a disturbance to summon you, Cashier explained. Caillou looked around, seeing the lack of gravity, the collapsed world. What even happened? The data limit is nowhere to being reached, she questioned, looking at the three. We don't know. That's why we called you, Dummy said. Cashier and Player nodding. The explosive sparks suddenly flew from the machine, causing gravity to correct itself. Parts turned all sorts of colors and nothing made sense. The machine sent everything away from itself before gravity came back, leaving Player and Cashier next to each other on the countertop. Dummy on the other side of the room, and Caillou close by to Dummy. And then, as fast as any of them could register, the world was gone. They floated in the void with nothing but themselves in a breakfast machine. Cashier grabbed onto Player, who in turn tightly grabbed Cashier's arm, causing the areas where their hands were to whiten. Dummy caught Caillou as she floated over towards them. They looked at each other before they disappeared into the hot rainbow explosion of the breakfast machine. Man, Player just wanted a snack at 4 a.m., not a multi-dimensional journey to piece back their world one by one, and 4 a.m. 2. Where the fuck are we now? Cashier registered a faint sting of pain in his head and arms as he came to, opening his eyes slowly. He looked around, not recognizing the area. The last thing he remembered was him, Caillou, Dummy, and Player being sent to this void. And then the breakfast machine exploded or something. He rolled over onto his side, attempting to sit up, and heard heavy footsteps approach him, causing him to shoot his head up. He didn't know who he was looking at. Whoa, hey, don't move, you're hurt. They knelt in front of him and grabbed a medical aid kit from, actually, where did they grab it from? They had a glowing band around their wrist, and cashiers seemed to have one too. Bots did a number on you, huh? The person chuckled as they put their hand on Cashier's shoulder. Bots? Yeah, the bots, the things that chase you. Cashier didn't feel any pain suddenly, standing in with the player. There, you're all healed. Where's your team? Cashier was completely lost. Team? What? Where even am I? He asked the person, who looked at him funny before responding. Oh, you're probably new to this game. This is Evade. You just run from next spots. Most people have teams. I just like to run around and revive people, though. They shrug, smiling. Evade. That's an odd name. Yeah, but who cares? The game is fun. Anyway, do you not have a friend? They ask, pulling a flashlight out. I do. Red cap, blue hoodie, green shorts. I don't think I've seen them. Sorry. They stood for a second before a noise was heard not far away. It was loud and obnoxious, but something in a cashier knew it was dangerous. Cashier's heart seemed to race. Oh shit. What? The person grabbed Cashier's wrist and started to run. Where are we going? What are we running from? Cashier shouted, to be heard over his own heart. A bot! I think we have Obunga chasing us. They shouted back, turning corners fast, making it hard for Cashier to register the turns they were making. After about 4 or so minutes of running, they slowed down, causing Cashier to run into their back, making him fall over. Oh, sorry. No, it's fine. The bots are gone. And I also see your friend. You do? Cashier looked around, saw an injured player lying on their stomach, covered in little burns and bruises and cuts, much like Cashier. Player! Cashier shouted, running over to the younger, out of breath and shaking them to avail. They're hurt as bad as you, damn. The medic took their back. Seriously, where is it coming from? Out again and placed their hand on Player's head. Player's injuries seemed to scab over and stop bleeding. All right there. There's no safe room on this map, so let's just run and hope for the best. The medic spoke, smiling. Oh. The two of them dragged Player over to a corner and sat in it as they regained their stamina, puffing and regaining their breath. Cashier felt some stirring next to him, looking over a slowly waking Player. Oh, welcome back, kid, Cashier said, causing the other to look over and wave to Player. Player stared at Cashier, at the new person looking puzzled. You probably got teleported to this game by accident. It happens, they shrugged. Before their face lit up and they looked a bit embarrassed. Alright, introductions. I'm Pitch. So hi, Pitch greeted him, smiling. Cashier, that's Player. They don't talk. Player nodded. Nice to meet you too. They sat there for a few more moments before Pitch stood. Well, no use in sitting here. You two can come with me if you want, but I'm gonna find people to revive. Pitch spoke, smiling and gesturing to the corridors. Doors. We'll go. It's not like we know what we're doing. Pitch chuckled. Yeah, suppose that's true. Well, come on then. We're running late. We're running again, so yeah, follow me. Pitch took off. Cashier and Player trailing behind them, although much more clumsily. Pitch showed them how to revive a person when they found a large group of what Pitch referred to as downed. Not to be confused with dead, because those were apparently different. Cashier rose as he finished reviving a downed person, thanking them as they stood. He nodded when a buzzer went off, Pitch and the person stretching. Player, who had been nearby, watching, jumped up and looked frightened, before quickly walking over to Cashier and half hiding. Pitch, what was that buzzer? Cashier asked, looking over to Pitch, who was stretching. The timer! The round is over. We got a brief grace period. I think we'll also choose a new map. Pitch answered, smiling. Sure enough. Out of the glowing wristband, a menu appeared with 3 images. Icons apparent on them, showing people voting for it. Pitch selected one of them before walking over to Cashier and Player, who were trying to figure out what this was and why they couldn't get rid of it. I honestly haven't played Evade before, so I don't know. Those are the map options. These ones are hard. So this one's pretty easy because there's more experienced players in the server, so I'd pick that one. Cashier nodded, tapping it, showing an icon of him over top and with other icons. Player's icon joined his a moment later. They were teleported to open desert area. Player found Cashier not long after they got teleported. They followed a flow of people up to a rooftop where there was lots of noise coming from. People danced and some even pretended to sleep. It was odd, but Player seemed more excited now they knew how this game worked. A buzzer went off, signaling the start of a round. Cashier sighed. Wait a minute, let me see something. Oh, wow. This one look. I think it's long, but I don't know. Now I'm confused. Where am I? Oh. By the end of the round... Oh, wait, where was I? Okay. They teleported to an open desert area. Player found Cashier not long after they got teleported, and they followed the flow of people up to a rooftop where there's a lot of noise, where a lot of noise is coming from. People danced and some... Okay, I read that part. A buzzer went off, signaling the start of a round. Cashier sighed. By the end of the round, Cashier was sweating, vaguely wondering where Dummy and Caillou ended up. Looking over a huffing and a panting player, quickly wrapping their hoodie around their waist while running towards him. Player tripped on something, causing him to go face first into the sandy floor. They bobbed their heads up and spit some sand out as Cashier walked over and chuckled. You good? He offered his hand. Player took to standing, looking back to see what tripped him. They saw something in the sand. They saw something in it poking out, so he dug it out. It was scrap metal. You tripped up by scrap metal. That's sad, buddy. Player playfully jabbed Cashier, who laughed at them. Player dusted the metal off, seeing a familiar marking on it. It was a piece of the breakfast machine. Player showed it to Cashier, who didn't recognize it instantly. The breakfast machine? Did it break and send us to another game entirely? Cashier questioned, looking at the metal. Player shrugged. Pitch walked up to them, rubbing their shoulder. What's wrong, guys? Player showed the metal to Pitch, who shrugged, not knowing what it was. We were teleported here from our... Cashier paused. A game after an explosion. This piece of explosion, Cashier explained. Oh, maybe you gotta collect them all, Pitch laughed. Something lit up in Player's eyes, and they grabbed Cashier by the wrist before making them both touch the metal with their hands and that had the wristband on them. Suddenly, the two disappeared. A message played simultaneously in their hands. 4 to go. And then it went black again. I spent 18 minutes reading all of this. And I'm not even halfway done yet. 3. No violence is not the answer. Why did you resort to that? Dummy slowly blinked, before realizing they were laying down somewhere different. They looked over to their right, then they left, seeing a gray cube, who they recognized as Caillou. I just gonna pronounce it like that, because I can't pronounce it. Oh, wait. They sat up, hearing metallic clangs and explosions in the background, shaking her cubic body before she started to float. Dummy, what happened? She asked, turning up to them. An explosion, I think. Any idea where we ended up? Dummy asked. She took a moment before responding. Combat worries, it seems. I've been here a couple of times for updates. The creators really love this game, she replied. I'll see if I can get us back to your game. Alright, Dummy said, stretching, dusting their hoodie off, and fixing their hair. They looked around. They were on a beach of sorts. A bridge in front of them with people battling each other. Dummy watched as somebody died, shaking their head. They noticed a glowing band on their wrist and tried to see what it is before Caillou spoke, and suddenly spooked Dummy. They jumped, looking at Caillou with a glare as he giggled. Sorry, she said. I don't think we can get back to your game, though. Caillou floated high, looking around. Though it seems bits and pieces of your game are scattered across other games. We might be able to piece it back together by finding them. Dummy nodded, looking around as he floated back down. I hope Player and Cashier are okay, Dummy commented absent-mindedly. I do too, but we need to focus. You look for the piece. I'm going to get Orby. I'll find you once I get him, Caillou said. Dummy nodded before walking off. At first, Dummy wanted to avoid conflict, looking for a large beach for whatever this piece of their world may be. Dummy guessed that it might be an ending. Though the beach seemed to have nothing on it that might be of use. And then a person came up and attacked them, sending Dummy to the ground, tumbling. Dummy quickly stabilized their bodies, looking for who attacked them. Oi! They shouted at the person who had a sword. I'm just looking for something. I don't want to fight. Dummy stood, realizing they too had a weapon. What are you looking for then? Not much to do but fight here, the attacker said, looking at Dummy up and down. It's hard to explain. Just leave me alone. I don't want to fight, they explained again. Well, should have chosen a different game to look for it in. And suddenly they charged Dummy, who summoned a shovel, blocking their sword with the wood of it. Dummy sighed, pushing them back, overpowering them and bringing their leg up and stomping on the attacker's arm, which had a sword. Oh yeah, they cried out. Dummy lifted the head and shoved up their own head, looking at the attacker in the eyes before bringing it down and bashing their head in. Blood splattered everywhere, and they died instantly. Dummy painted quickly as a notification appeared above their wristband. Dummy killed Quirzo _X2 with a shovel. So that was confirmation. People didn't die when they got killed here. It was really just a game. People respawn here. Dummy huffed, walking away, now confident that they should find the peace somewhere elsewhere. They felt slightly bad, wondering if what they had done was too harsh, but decided to be done. They attacked them more than once. Dummy wandered up a blocky cliffside, looking at the top of the piece, before again getting jump scared by Kuyu. Dummy jumped again, turning around, glaring at the cube. Orby now with her. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you again, he apologized, before Orby chimed in. Why are you covered in blood? Good question, Orbs. Dummy. Why are you covered in blood? Kuyu asked as well. Dummy told them that someone had attacked him, so they hit back, meaning they had not yet found a piece. Kuyu filled me in what we needed to do. I think I have an idea for what I could do, Orby said, floating up higher, looking around before letting off a pulse. Dummy let resonate within them, shaking them all the way down to their code. Orby floated back down, looking at Kuyu, then Dummy. What? Dummy looked at the geometric lovers before Orby floated over, knocking Dummy down and catching them mid-fall, before floating them back up and making the pulse again. Found it! Orby exclaimed. They lowered Dummy on the ground. Oof, what was that for, Orby? The game was in turn with your code, so it was easier if you were touching my body while I created the pulse to resonate with the piece of the game, Orby explained. Dummy nodded. It's over there, but it seems people have found it and are trying to find out what it is. So Kuyu, can you lift down? Kuyu can lift you down. She's faster than me, Orby said, and Kuyu nodded, making her way over to Dummy. All right. Dummy grabbed on hold of Kuyu as she took off from the cliff, hovering above the group fast as she approached a group of people. I see it. Dummy let Kuyu know before they went in. Kuyu went just over the group. Dummy let go one of their hands and grabbed the piece. They zoomed off as the people chased them with weapons. Dummy let go of Kuyu as they got to the top of the cliffs. Dummy grabbing Kuyu and Orby and the piece before making them touch with them. With that, the three of them disappeared. A familiar message came to mind as they left. Ending. Chips. Congrats. You got chips from people who wanted to kill you. I suppose this also counts as sleep. So, ending. Sleep. You didn't actually get sleep, but it's close enough. Get a snack. I mean, it's called Get a Snack at 4 a.m. gone wrong. It obviously gone wrong. And I think that took like, I could do the math, which I'm too lazy to do. I have taken approximately 7 minutes to do that, to read that whole thing. 4. Death Wish? Kinda seems like it. Notes. Quick TW for dark themes like death and drowning. Yes, this got dark very quickly, so I needed the fucking character development. LMAO. Keep this note in for the TW. Cashier opened their eyes quickly, gasping as he shot up. He looked around for Player, seeing the child knocked out faintly, wrapping his hand with a piece of metal clutched tightly in their hand. He sighed, taking his hand, which still had the wristband, away from them, looking around, trying to see if he knew where they are now. It was dimly lit. They were in a small room by the looks of it. Cashier noticed a single bed and 2 doors. Then he noticed a collar around his neck. He peeked at it before getting jump-scared by the call of a rooster, looking around as the room lit up and one of the doors opened. He shook Player. I think that was a typo, so ignore that. He shook Player awake, hearing an explosion go off somewhere nearby, which made him jump again and made Player awake. Player pointed at the collar and Cashier shrugged. I don't know how it got there. Maybe we're in another game, he said, standing. Player stood after him, walking out the open door, looking to see people. They walked to a group of other collared people, Cashier following not far behind the kid. There was a spinner. Everybody else was collared, and blocks seemed to hold other rooms, and that looked like what Cashier saw in the room he had. He tapped somebody's shoulder, then turning. I know this seems like a dumb question. Well, what game is this? He asked. Player looking around. Social experiment, they responded. It's a waiting game to see if you die or not. They looked at the spinner as it spun, seeing that it selected a random execution. They seemingly had no emotion, dull and quiet, voice raspy. Die? The cashier took a step back, looking over to Player, going up to them quickly and grabbing their shoulders. Player, we need to find whatever we need to find. We can actually die if we stay here long enough, he said, panicked. He didn't want to die. Player's eyes widened at that, then nodding, knowing they could actually die, looking for metal that shouldn't be hard, right? Well, turns out it was. They looked for pieces of the breakfast machine, to no avail, coming up blank as explosions went off. They were looking. The spinner must have selected something other than random execution, because a force suddenly pulled Player and Cashier and Player back into a tank. It sealed before they could get out, causing them to look at each other with wide eyes, and a swarm of people gathered. They started to press a button, and a tank filled with water. The water increased rapidly, and Player and Cashier looked at each other with a distinct fear. These people not only had death wishes, but also wanted to kill. Player pounded on the glass, hoping to be let out. It didn't work. The air bubble they had slowly grew smaller. They had slowly grew smaller and smaller. The ice cold water rising faster, and it was now up to Player's lower torso, Cashier's waist. Lower torso, Cashier's waist. Cashier pressed against the reinforced glass, panting. Player, hold your breath when it gets too hot, he instructed. Player nodded while banging on the glass. The water rose higher and higher. It was at Player's neck and Cashier's upper torso. The water still seeped into Cashier's bones, settling there, causing him to shiver. He shuddered a breath, closing his eyes, only to open them when he felt Player press up against his body, trying to get Cashier to hoist him up slightly higher so they didn't drown. Cashier did so, their heads now almost level. Cashier put their head on Cashier's shoulder, sighing. Cashier felt how cold they were, the longer bits of hair dripping ice-cold water. Hold your breath, Player, Cashier said before inhaling, holding his breath as he hugged Player tight. Player hugged back. It was odd. The two of them were right on death's doorstep, knocking on his door even. Cashier knew Player, but never knew them. He knew they were 12 or so, and lived alone with their dad, but that was it, really. I mean, I guess I understand what the TW was there, like, in the beginning. Yeah.
Hey, you copied me.
Cashier never bothered to learn anything about Player. He just knew them as the kid that would come up to his store at 4 a.m., buying odd item combinations and leaving, only to show up the next day and do it again. If Cashier was asked to say who he thought was his friend out of everyone he knew, he'd say Dummy. But being here at death's doorstep, drowning in a tear as his vision went black, he almost felt he understood Player in that moment. They were really just a kid having fun doing whatever, playing a game. He heard Player choke on water, not being able to breathe, but instead of thrashing and flailing, they accepted their fate. Hugging tighter to Cashier than before as Cashier choked on water himself, vision swimming and going dotty. He closed his eyes, thinking he'd learn more about Player as he met him again on the other side. Not because he felt bad, because he realized they deserved to be known more than a kid that gets snacks at 4 in the morning. They didn't deserve that. Maybe Cashier deserved to be remembered and how he would be, though. Just a cashier. It seemed fitting. Cashier allowed himself to slip into unconsciousness, faintly aware that he wouldn't wake up. The cold faded away. His body went numb. The last thing he remembered was Player's body relaxing as they drowned together, painfully, yet somehow simultaneously, peacefully. So this is really the end. Huh. Okay. Wait, no, I just decided to go inside the comments. Yippee! We finished with trauma from drowning. Why is it the same person just doing it? I mean, yes, that game was actually oddly similar to Death Penalty, which I'm not very sure if it's the same game or if one of them is just a copy of the other. 5. I wrote this chapter at 2 in the morning. LMAO. Fun fact, the cover of this book was from this chapter. Dummy peeled their eyes open, sitting up, rubbing their eyes with their sleeve, trying to wake themselves up. They looked over to the side, seeing Caillou and Orby. Get up, Dummy shook them, gently slapping them until they woke. Where are we now? Should we not be back in our game? Dummy asked, standing as the other two floated up. Let me check. You look around, Orby. Right. The ball floated higher up, looking around. They came back down. I can't see the top. We're just in a high tower, Orby said, Dummy looking up. I can't either. Any idea, Caillou? Dummy looked over to the cube. I think we're in a game called Tower of Hell, Caillou answered, looking over at Dummy and Orby. And do you think Orby might be able to do the pulsing thing again? Dummy looked between the two mathematical shapes. I can try, Orby said. Dummy grabbed onto them, and they hovered up, making the all pulsing again. It's all the way up there, Orby said, letting Dummy down. Can we not fly up? Are you too tired? Dummy asked, looking at them. In my defense, I've been updating games all day. I'm very tired, Kitty said. But your game is special to me. I'm not gonna let it not exist, she said. But yes, I'm too tired to fly all the way up, she finished, laughing awkwardly. I'm quite tired too. Those pulses are me rummaging for disturbances in game data. It's done so fast though, it makes a pulse effect. It's very tiring. Orby sighed. You two rest then. I'll carry you up, Dummy said, opening their arms. You might need your arms for this game, Kitty stated. Oh well, Orby, you go on my hood. Dummy flared their hood out. Orby not refusing to take a nap, took the spot. Caillou, are you able to make yourself smaller? Might be able to fit you in my pocket that way, Dummy asked. I can for a short while. But that takes energy, and I have no more, she said. Oh, well, it might be an uncomfortable fit, but try my hoodie pocket. It's oversized, so it shouldn't be too bad, but you're the size of my head, so... And sure enough, Caillou did it. It just took a lot of loosening fabric. Eventually, Dummy made sure Orby could stay secure while they recharged before moving over to the ladder they saw. Dummy climbed it before looking at the branching tight ropes. Dummy sighed before starting to I can't pronounce that. How do you pronounce that? Sorry, I can't pronounce that. What was it? Mano.
Maneuver.
Okay. It was pronounced maneuver.
Maneuver.
Okay. Okay. I couldn't tell what that was. Is it just me, or are there just random words that you see, that you hear, but never see? That's weird. Anyways, right now for me, it's like 8:44, almost 9 o'clock. Oh, well, it might be uncomfortable. Oh, wait, no, I read the part. Dummy sighed before starting to maneuver over it. Once Dummy had made it to the second platform, they saw a green set of walk platforms separated. They walked to the first, seeing it was a conveyor. They panicked and started to run faster than the conveyor and jumped to the next. It was a good minute of panic, jumping, and running. They made it to another checkpoint platform. They looked over and saw even more obstacles. Dummy sighed, now realizing why Q called it the Tower of Hell. I mean, that's the literal name of the game. Dummy grabbed an orange steel beam, lifting themselves up to it, looking up at the remaining sections. They sighed, looking at the next beam, reaching and taking it. They almost fell, balancing as they made their way over. But they eventually made it to the next platform. This was green again, and had cubes floating. Dummy reached out, touching one, putting weight on it, and seeing how it spun. Dummy narrowed their eyes at the spinning cube. They wanted to give up. They liked sitting down and doing nothing. It was what they do. And honestly, activity was too much for Dummy, overwhelming them if they had anything too far outside their comfort zone. But they supposed that they might have just been being indefinitely stuck standing still for so long before Player showed up. Dummy remembers the first time they saw Player. Player accidentally giving Dummy life again. Player would stop by Dummy every night before heading into the store, waving a hand in front of their face. Dummy shook their head. If they're doing this, they have to know. Because if they don't, the longer it'll take to get them back to their quiet life back. Dummy took a few steps back, running at the cube and latching on, quickly jumping from one to another before any of the next platform, all cubes now spinning wildly. Dummy wiped some sweat off their forehead, smiling satisfied. Now, Dummy thought, I think I'm ready. Dummy nodded, standing and looking at the next set of obstacles. They ran straight at it, head first. There's only one way to live, Dummy thought, quietly and lazy, but I gotta do this for that. It took Dummy about an hour and a half after that point to reach the top. White marble greeted them. Orby seemed to sense that they were at the top. So did Q, it seemed. You're at the top already? Wow, Orby commented, starting to hover while Dummy slumped down, huffing and panting, sweating excessively. Already? It took me an hour to get up there. Orby laughed a little at that. Sorry, I fell asleep, but I'm recharged now. Let's get to the ending, Orby said. They're right. We need to get to the ending as quick as possible. Me and Orby can get to the next one for you, Q said cheerfully, and Dummy agreed to that. The three made their way to a plate with eggs and orange juice. A complete breakfast, Q said, floating around it, looking suspiciously at the eggs and orange juice. Is it even salted? Dummy asked tiredly, rubbing their eyes, looking at the breakfast that floated in the air. Doesn't look like it is, but that's not the point here. Just tough it and get the ending, Dummy. Orby chimed in, a bit groggy from the nap they took while in Dummy's hood. Dummy touched it. Q and Orby touched it as well. A familiar black came to them before giving them their destination. Ending. Perfect breakfast. Congrats! You now have an actually healthy breakfast? Is the egg even salted? It is not salted. Put some salt on that egg, damn. Okay. Not halfway there, but somewhat halfway there, I guess. Huzzah! Friendly murder. Wait a bit. Player gasped for air. Their clothes now seemingly dry, followed by cashier, who also looked dry now. Player and cashier looked at each other, sitting on fake grass. Looks like a vampire has appeared on a random plate, somebody announced, causing the two to look over where it came from, seeing two people battling at each other's sword. On top of a house? Houses? One of them stabbed the other. It turned out the sword was fake, only being in plastic. A victory noise played as they teleported behind player and cashier fist bumped. Cashier looked down at his hands. He's sure he just drowned, but where was he? So was player. Maybe this is what the other side looked like. Again? Suddenly, he was teleported to a bit of grass. A red house behind him. There are other houses. Player is directly to his right. He stood looking at the house. Then player who shrugged. A voice came back. An anvil is falling! Look out! And sure enough, an anvil fell. And they announced again. Somebody looks like they need a safety net. Player's plate suddenly had a V-shaped safety net under it. And they poked it with their foot. Seeing it bounce as he did so. The world suddenly darkened. The world is covered in darkness. Cashier could see player motioning for cashier to jump over, so he ran as darkness closed around them and landed on a safety net. Player pulled him up. Any ideas where we are now? Cashier asked. Player shrugged and shook their head. Figured. Guess we didn't die. Must not have been a piece there to collect. Do you still have the first piece? Player nodded, pulling up a piece of the breakfast machine out of the sweater pocket. Cashier nodded instead. Merry Christmas! Came early for everybody this year. Man, that announcer guy's annoying. Two players will be forced to duel. And player and cashier was teleported to a gas box with a plastic sword. He looked down at a canton and began to see a person also with a plastic sword. May the best win, he said before a buzzer went off and they ran towards him. Cashier ducked down and rolled away, readying himself again. Cashier stood and took a swing at them, missing, but swimming again and hitting them. They didn't teleport back, so maybe he was hit him multiple times. He ducked and out of the way of another attack, he was hit by the third swing, seeing an HP bar appear over his wristband. It said 50 HP. He swung at them again, hitting them and ending the duel. They were teleported back, and then the darkness finally left their area. Cashier looked for player. Fire anybody? Anybody? Wee woo! A fire extinguisher fell onto somebody's head, knocking them off the top of their house and into the abyss. Watch out! There's a sniper about! Suddenly, somebody shot a gun, not knowing who it hit. Cashier looked for a house with a safety net and started to jump plate to plate. He made it to player's plate, not seeing them. She opened a door to player's small house and walked in, where I don't think it's supposed to say she, it's supposed to say he, but I think it was a typo or something. Yeah, let's ignore that. Where player awkwardly sat across a sniper gun, shaking. You have the sniper. Player nodded. You shot the sniper. Player, again, nodded. Cashier shook his head. You never handled a gun before? Players shook their head. Cashier sighed, picked the gun up, and it took a few seconds, getting comfortable in the position he held it in. Trade ya, sword for gun. Eliminate everybody here, win, and get the breakfast machine bit. Player nodded, taking the plastic sword from cashier. Player opened the door, helped cashier climb on top of the roof, where he crouched down, aimed, and shot a plastic pellet, hitting somebody and knocking them out of the game. He aimed again, shooting somebody else, twice this time, knocking them out of the game as well. Player jumped to the plate beside theirs, swinging at the plastic sword a couple of times, knocking somebody out as well. Somebody's playing Minecraft, and now player was battling someone with blue plastic sword. Cashier forced onto them, shooting, missing a couple of times due to the other not standing still, but hitting once enough for player to finish them off. But instead, player didn't finish them off. They finished player off, causing player to teleport back. Cashier knocked out one more person before the one with the blue sword came up to the roof and tried to attack Cashier, who ducked and rolled off the roof. He grabbed onto his plate, hoisting himself up and jumping to the one behind him. The person was hot on his trail. The announcer suddenly said something odd. Seems like, wait, what? Scrap mat? What am I supposed to do with? A sigh was heard. Okay, whatever. Seems like someone's a hoarder. And a piece of scrap metal the breakfast machine bit fell 2 plates away. Cashier wasted no time, running over to the plate while escaping the person behind him. He grabbed the piece and kicked the person as he tried to jump over the plate he was on. He jumped over to the plate as they landed on, pushing them off the plate. A victory sounded, and Cashier was teleported back to the grassy area, where a player hugged him. The person who he pushed off fist bumped his shoulder. Good game, dude. You played pretty good. Cashier smiled and panted as he looked at the bit of breakfast his machine. Player grabbed their piece and joined it to Cashier's. Just like before, they were gone in a flash. The message played again in their minds again. 3 more to find. Cashier felt ready. Player was never excited to play any video games in their life as right now. The real adventure begins now. Alright, I'm halfway through the whole thing. So I'm guessing there's like 12, about 12 chapters. And it took 47 minutes to do that. That's why I hate reading aloud. But whatever. Toothpaste thief! No, I love that chapter. It literally says toothpaste thief. Boom, it's a literal toothpaste thief. Caillou's vision faded and returned to her as he began to hover. Orby began to do so as well. Dummy seemingly still out of it. Let them rest? Orby asked, looking between them and Caillou. Yes, Orby, we're letting them rest. They let us rest, or mainly you. I was rested too doing that, Caillou said, opening a menu to see where they had ended up. Where are we now? Orby asked, looking over at her. Let it load first, dumbass, Caillou responded. Okay, Orby huffed, looking around, trying to see if they could recognize the area. I don't really recognize this game. I don't think I've ever been here before, have you? Orby asked an actual, genuine question this time. I have, yes. I update plenty of games every day, Clay told him. Anyway, this game we're at, or I suppose in, whichever it is, it's called the normal elevator, she finished, letting the menu dissipate before her. Oh yeah, I've never been to this one before. This game never had trouble that needed me to remain here, Orby told her. I see. Well, we need to find the ending that's hidden somewhere in this game. I highly doubt it'll be in the lobby. More like those floors in the elevator, he said. Are we taking dummy? Orby asked. Yes. We need them to get the ending? Caillou asked, confused, in a type of way you couldn't tell a person was joking or not because of how stupid a question was. Caillou sighed. She loved Orby, but they could be stupid at times. With some struggle, the two had dragged Dummy into an elevator. The three were teleported into a busy elevator with more people. Dummy sat up against the wall of an elevator and yawned. Where are we? Dummy yawned. Yawned. Again. Now? Dummy asked, rubbing their eyes. Simple game. We'll finish it for you. When the ending is in sight, we'll wake you, Caillou said. Yeah, go to sleep. While we finish for her. Alright. Dummy pulled her hood up over this mess of hair. bringing their legs up and putting their arms around them and putting their head down and resting. Q looked around the elevator and noticed the timer. She assumed it was counting the time to the next floor, and sure enough, she was right. A chime rang out of the doors and slid open. Some people stepped off the elevator, some stayed on. Orby hovered outside, seeing cows. Yes, cows. Orby went back in the elevator. It's just cows, Orby said, disappointed. What were you expecting? Kelly asked, fighting back her laugh. Maybe a quick, easy way out of this? Orby mumbled. He let out a small laugh, escaped from her before she spoke up. Orby, we'll find it when we find it. Don't worry. She floated over to them, bumped them. They didn't have bodies, so the closest thing they could get to hugging was bumping their geometric bodies together. Orby let out a small giggle after her, almost turning red. I know. I just wanted to find it quickly. Some people entered back the elevator before doors closed. Yeah, it'd be nice if we did, but life never works out that way. Q backed away, looking over at the timer as it counted down. Orby turned, watching it change numbers. Once it reached 0, the doors opened. The floor was now some kind of festival attraction. 3 people were teleported to the stand. They were explained the one who eats the most chicken in a certain amount of time to win. Q found it amusing seeing people try to win something so trivial. But she did see why. It was for fun. Fun must be nice. Her life is almost all work. Sometimes she gets downtime. Spending it with Orby is her favorite way of spending that downtime. She always thought was fuzzy and warm with Orby. She was glad to have found them. The chime of the elevator doors brought her out of her thoughts and back to the real world. It seemed to be a basketball court. She floated out of the elevator, looking at the people playing, tossing the balls up and trying to get them in a hoop. Then chasing the ball once it fell down. People amused her. They were simple, but that's why she likes people. They're simple, and she's simple. The next few floors went by without much ruckus, until a specific floor, which Orby decided to enter. Only came back with a vibrantly colored wig and makeup on. They didn't seem too happy. I wouldn't seem too happy if I had to go through that either. Q found it funny, however. Stop laughing. The ending is there. Go get it, Orby said, a bit annoyed by their lover. Okay, I'll get it, you wuss, she joked, colliding their bodies before entering the floor. She looked around and noticed, hovering over it before taking on top of her and hovering it back down. Orby nudged Dummy as she re-entered the elevator. We got the ending. Touch it, Dummy, Orby said quietly. Dummy groaned, reaching out as Orby touched the ending themselves. Ending. Toothpaste. Congrats, you got some toothpaste. Wait, is this half eaten? Who the fuck ate half a tube of toothpaste? Ending. Shoplifting. I figured I'd throw this in for you since it's impossible to get it otherwise. No, but seriously, which one of you ate the toothpaste? No, I honestly think it was Player from earlier because it did mention about the toothpaste thing. 8. Player hates horror games. Now I think this is gonna be a horror game, and I love the title already. Player hates horror games. I mean, I'm sorry, but who's saying what? I've never seen a chapter saying blank hates blank. Yeah, whatever. Player sat up, looking around for Cashier. The mention was beside them, knocked down. Their bruises and injuries from the fight just previously were not gone, but they could make do. Cashier looked at Peace, and Player knew Cashier did work hard at the store. They let him rest. Some is better than none. Player opted to look around. They weren't in a large area, only enough to fit maybe 4 people tops. Player thought. It was an elevator, playing some kind of funky jiggle as it descended. Player had no idea where they were headed, but they felt ready this time. Player leaned against one of the elevator walls, closing their eyes and breathing slowly, taking in the rest period. Something told them they'd not having much rest here in this game. At one point, player fell asleep to the hum of the machinery and the music in the background. Player usually didn't have dreams, but sometimes they would. And they're usually not dreams, but nightmares. Nightmares are about their world breaking and them not being able to fix it. They knew the power they held. They knew that they could erase everyone if they wanted to, but they didn't want to. And if they were forced to, well, they'd rather die. Player felt almost responsible for this world, as if something they did could tear it apart and corrupt it. And they were guilty for that. They felt guilty they could cause the end of everything with the press of a button. They felt even more guilty knowing that their problems would be placed with Dummy and Cashier, who comforted them whenever they did dream. They felt guilty because they were busy and had enough to deal with compared to other 12-year-olds' nightmares. They could turn to their father, but their father was asleep almost most hours a day. And when he was awake, he'd usually be very busy with his work. Player felt guilty about it. Player felt guilty about not being able to talk. Player knew what other words were. Player knew how to read and how to write. They knew this, but for some reason they could never speak. They didn't know why, but they grew to accept they never utter a single word for as long as they live. Reminds me of somebody. Player just wanted to stop spiraling in their thoughts, to stop dreaming, to stop and sleep peacefully, and not worry about things 12-year-old kids shouldn't have to worry about. But player hated to be called a kid. They did. Really, they weren't a kid. They were all grown up. They were strong. They could fight. Player knew everything an adult would know. They could cook, clean, do work, go to sleep on time. Player was mature. They swore. They weren't a kid. Not a kid. No, player screamed. Then, player woke up, breathing hard, sweating. They felt a hand on their shoulder and looked to see Cashier with a worried look. Bad dream again, bud? He asked. And player stared at him a bit longer before looking away and nodding slowly. The two sat there in silence for a bit, leaning against the wall in awkward silence. Player was balled up, knees high, and red head resting on them. Tears were silently falling out of their eyes. Cashier looked at them. Dreams aren't real, player. I know, I told you that before, but they can hurt you. Cashier spoke softly, reaching out and placing a hand on player's back. You know that, right? Cashier asked quietly. Player nodded, sniffling. I don't know what you could have nightmares about that could cause you to break this badly, but it's not true. I think that's supposed to say true. Yeah. And it's okay. Cashier smiled, rubbing circles into their back. Player sniffled again, leaning into Cashier before fully hugging them. Cashier ruffled their hair. Once we get back, we could take a long nap in the store. Seems like it'd be fun. Cashier chuckled, making player smile softly. The elevator's doors slid open with a chime, causing the two to look in that direction. Shall we? Player asked, nodding toward the room. Player nodded, standing with Cashier and wandering out into the room. The elevator closed behind them. They stood in a lobby, an empty lobby. Hotel lobby. Cashier looked behind the desk, jumping over to grab a single key. Guess we should go through the door? I think I know what the game this is, actually. Cashier asked, not particular to anybody, just as a general question. Player nodded, watching Cashier unlock the door. The door creaked open. Let's go. Cashier smiled and walked through the door. Player not far behind. The room was carpeted with a bookshelf or two, with a few drawers and desks. They opened the door labeled 002. Continuing on. This game seems a lot different from the last two, huh? Cashier absent-mindedly said. Player nodded, pushing the next door open. They passed through the doors 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Don't come in the comments with that. Just don't come in the comments with that, please. Before encountering lights flickering, a distant, inhuman scream that could be heard getting closer in closet with chattering light bulbs. Cashier looked back, then quickly around the room as before pulling player, shoving them to a closet, and hiding into the entrance of the room. That player stiffly held doors shut. Something came through the room with a loud noise, similar to the scream, filled his ears. Then he felt a cold touch caress his hand, and opened his eyes face to face with something that felt oddly like player's presence, just similar enough to his own that he wasn't unnerving. It seems like you died to rush, they said. Looks like it, but look at hints for its arrival, they said. It appears, though, you are not meant to be here, they said, pulling Cashier up. I will revive you, but I cannot revive you twice. Do not die again, or you'll die for good, they say, closing their eyes, flickering their wrists. Cashier gasps, his vision returning and seeing a panicked player staring at him. Hey, I'm here. It's okay, I'm here, Cashier said, comforting as they nodded slowly. I think this is a horror game, Cashier ascended, standing up with player. Here, I think we can die in this game, too, Cashier said, more silently. Player swallowed nervously and nodded, uncertainty in their eyes. Let's just finish this and get home, Cashier said, rubbing his eyes and smiling. Player nodded, following behind. And count the doors so we don't go insane, Cashier chuckled. Player smiled. 3 minutes later, they arrived at door 15. 5 minutes later, they arrived at door 27. 8 minutes later, they entered room 34, and the lights flickered. The same screaming heard from before. Cashier looked around, seeing 3 closets. Get in one of the closets again, Cashier shouted, already climbing into one himself. He saw a player get into the closet themselves and closed the closet doors before the entity rush came through. This time, Cashier didn't die. They exited their closets and nodded at each other, now getting a hang of this. 2 minutes later, they arrived at door 41. 6 minutes later, they arrived at door 50. I mean, how long does it take to get to 9 doors? I don't know. Never mind. This one looked odd to them. It was 2, not 1. It also had lots of noise coming from behind it. Another inhuman voice. Players shuffled nervously, fidgeting with their hoodie. They did not like this game. It was clear now it was horror, but not playful horror like Evade was. This is full-blown horror. Hey, we'll be fine, buddy. Player smiled. I promise. Cashier nodded his head toward the door. Player nodded. They knew Cashier didn't lie, so there's no reason to be scared of whatever was on the other side. At least not with Cashier. Player let out a shaky breath before they opened the doors and let out a huge creak. It was a library. A figure with no eyes and only a mouth with razor-sharp teeth stared them down before rushing at them. The 2 got ready to move before something fell over, drawing its attention. The 2 nodded at each other and quietly as possible walked to the bookshelf. A bookshelf was half out of it, glowing. Oh my god, I've been reading for 1 hour and 30 minutes. No, not 30 minutes, 3 minutes. Cashier took it slowly and silently, opening to see a shape with number. Player peeked around the corner while Cashier tried to figure out what it meant. They saw a door with a large lock. Player showed Cashier the door. Player saw more books, glowing faintly around the library. The 2 agreed to go separate ways to get the most books. Player swiftly and quietly crossed over to the left side, grabbing one of the books, an X and an 8. They moved up, looking at the desk, walking over to it, a paper sheet from it. It looked like a key to the code. There was an X on the key, with a Roman numeral for 4 over it. Player guessed that when it was the 4th digit. The entity came down the stairs again. Cashier hid. Player ducked down, covering their mouth as the entity passed close. They could almost touch it. They shook uncontrollably. It looked like he was going to kill them in one hit. They shut their eyes tightly, begging not to be caught. They didn't want to die. The figure left. The player breathed heavily, but quietly, looking up at the desk for Cashier. Cashier quietly walked to the entity, up the stairs, and grabbed another book, looking for player and beckoning them over. Player hold their breath, standing and walking to cashier as the entity made its way back over to the desk. Player made it up, shaking still. Player showed them the key, and cashier's face lit up, almost like he had a cartoony light bulb over his head. He took the paper and went to the padlock. He entered a few digits. The door unlocked. He ran through, and player followed suit. They shut the door hard and slumped against it. "Oh my goodness," cashier said, almost out of breath. "I was terrified of that thing," cashier said, trying to relax. "Sorry if I looked like I was trying too hard to be brave back there. I figured you just needed me to be brave. Be brave. You okay, kid?" Cashier looked over, placing a hand on player's shoulder. Player nodded, breathing slowly, but trying to calm their shaking. "All right, let's sit here for a bit." Player nodded, fixing their hoodie. "Are you tired?" Cashier asked. Player nodded. "Same. Take a nap, kid. I can see your eye bags," cashier instructed, looking at them. They scooted over closer to cashier before leaning on him. Player let their head fall into cashier's before allowing himself to drift off into a short but peaceful nap. Cashier smiled. Cashier placed an arm around his shoulder, allowing himself to drift too. Player opened their heavy eyes, looking around, still in the horror game. They looked at cashier, who was still asleep. Player nudged cashier, who slowly peeled his eyes open too. Player hummed. Cashier hummed, rubbing his eyes to look over at player. "Woke up, did ya?" Cashier asked tiredly. Player nodded, stretching their arms before standing. Cashier yawned, following suit. "Guess we better continue, huh? Who knows how many more rooms there are?" Player smiled, walking to the door labeled 52. They pushed open the door and continued on. Door 57, door 63, door 72, door 81, door... Wait, did those lights just flicker? Player looked at cashier when a screeching sound could be heard. That was not Rush. Player and cashier looked around for closets, finding only one. Cashier shoved player in, and player pulled cashier in, awkwardly fitting two in the same small space. A toxic green and purple light flashed outside as the two stiffly held doors shut. A glitchy and broken noise came in as it passed. Player held their breath and looked at cashier, who was focused on waiting for it to pass. The entity circled back and rushed back, doing that about 5 times. About a minute after the last rush back, cashier opened the door, looking around and stepping out. Player looked around for the door and pushed it open. Door 90. "So many doors already. How many more are there?" Cashier asked nobody in particular, continuing to the next door. Door 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97. The doors were close to 100. Door 99. Cashier spoke, bored. "This room is small. It looked like none they saw before. There were just a couple closets." Door 100. Cashier said, pushing the door open. "Looks like this is the end, huh, player?" Cashier asked, walking over to a lever. Player nodded, watching as cashier pulled it down. The door lifted, revealing a stairwell and the figure. Cashier held his breath and signaled player to turn around. Cashier turned and ran to a closet, player following. Cashier tucked himself into a closet, player doing the same. The figure coming toward and lingering outside cashier's closet. Player walked in horror as it turned away, coming to them. The figure stood there, watching, waiting for player to let themselves die. Player held their breath, trying to get their heart to slow down. It felt like forever until it left. Cashier opened the one closet door, slowly tiptoeing out. Player shook their head, opening the door slowly as well, stepping out and quietly walking to cashier. Cashier offered his hand to player, who took it nervously held it. Cashier and player wandered up the stairs, finding a broken down elevator. I saw an electric room back there. I think we need to power it on, Cashier whispered, taking the key. Player nodded, catching onto Cashier's idea. The two quietly went down with a key, unlocking a gray metal door which led to an electrical panel. Player opened it as Cashier kept guard at the door. Player switched it on. It flickered, buzzing before powering on and starting to boot up. Player flickered the beakers as they flashed, attempting to run the elevator on. It took him 4 minutes, but eventually the panel read, "Elevator power on." Players shoved Cashier out of the way, and the two ran up the stairs and onto the elevator. The door shut, and the elevator started to descend. "Oh my god, we didn't even get the piece," Cashier said, realizing. Player held a chunk of metal in their hand, smiling. "You fucker." Cashier sighed, falling back and laughing as they disappeared and entered their next game. 2 more to find. 9. Oh shit, another horror game. Fuck, oh no. Why is there so much swearing right now? First it was cashier, and now it's the chapter name with the swear words in it. I already did that. Dummy sat up, rubbing their eyes and looking around. They seemed to be in the furniture section of the store. Light fog obscuring the visible areas further, leaving it unknown. Am I thinking is that the game that I'm thinking of right now? Dummy stood up, looking for Q and Orby, who were also just now waking up. What game are we in? Dummy looked at Q, who was tired of hearing that question. Let me check first. You don't have to ask me every time, Dummy. Q said, unamused. Dummy cracked a smile. Sorry. Orby looked around, floating up higher. I can't see an end to this place, they said, floating back around the concrete flooring. I can't either, Dummy replied. 3008. He spoke up suddenly. What? We're in 3008, a horror game, Q answered. Oh, great. Dummy rolled their eyes. A horror game. Let's go for this game. Finding an ending, preferably. Orby responded. I mean the actual game, not our goal. Oh. Orby looked down and averted their gaze somewhere. Well, it's nothing more than survival. Basically, don't die, Q supplied for her friend and lover. So, what ending are we gonna get this time anyway? Dummy asked, picking up a direction and walking. We'll have to wait and see, Q answered. The two geometric shapes followed Dummy as they wandered, looking around for the different furniture. How big is this place anyway? Orby asked, looking at their lover. It has no end. It's infinite, Q answered. Oh. Orby looked down and stopped before catching up with their lover and friend. How many endings left now anyway? 3? 2? Orby asked. This time not anybody other than himself. Probably only a few. We only seem to be getting base endings, Dummy answered, not realizing that Orby had been talking absent-mindedly. Maybe, Orby responded, before Dummy stopped and picked up a stuffed bear. This is mine now, Dummy said, having a cheeky grin displayed across their face. Q sighed, looking around. I thought more people would be here. It's a popular game after all. I said it was infinite. That's why I haven't seen anybody, most likely. The trio continued on, chattering amongst themselves before the lights flickered and, with a sinister tone, shut off, leaving them in the darkness. Q, does this normally? The store closed. Please exit the building, a voice behind before they registered the heavy footstep and realized this creature was running at them. Okay, plan B, run! Dummy shouted, taking off, leaving Orby and Q to follow behind, but instead the two went a separate way from Dummy. Dummy was pulled into some sort of base by the arm of a doorway, shut promptly afterward. Orby and Q kept going till they decided to float out of reach. The two shapes made their way to an outpost, seemingly on a pillar, and rested there before both spoke. Did you bring something new to the base, Eli? Orby looked up. No way. No, why? Another spoke. Stepped out. Oh, weird. The voice Eli said, shrugging. Sorry, we can't leave. We just need a rest. We'll leave. We just need a rest. Q answered, speaking to two people. Oh, they can talk, the first said, crouching down. It's fine, you can stay, we don't mind. Those employees are brutal. Eli said, I'm Eliza, she/her. Eliza said, smiling. Cupid, she, her too. Cupid added, what's your guy's name? I'm Q, but you can call me Q if you want. She, her as well. Q, his head, looking at Orby. That's Orby. They, them. They don't speak to new people a lot. Oh, that's fine. Eliza waved the two off. Night should end in a couple of minutes. We have 5 minutes per day and do anything we need to do. Then during the night we just stay up here. Keep it added on. I see. We have another with us, but we went separate ways. Their name is Dummy. We can help you find them if you need us to, Cupid said, with a small smile. Please do, Q laughed. Of course. Getting lost from your group here is basically never seeing them again. The lights flickered on and a tune started to play across an echoey store. Well, down we go, Lisa said, beginning to climb down a tower. Cupid joined her, and Orby and Q floated down the slide as their slumpy shapes, not humanoid. They met at the bottom of a tower. Looking down before walking in the direction that Q had seen Dummy run during the night. I saw them go this way. Don't know how far though. There's a base full of others down there along this way. They probably got pulled here by those guys. Oh, that's a good thing. Means Dummy didn't die, Q laughed. Q, Orby, over here, a familiar voice called out, causing the quartet to look over in the direction that the familiar gray human figure. Dummy, Q said, I didn't know where you went, and we went in separate dimensions, she said, relieved as she floated over along with Orby and the others in tow. Some people saved us from being chased, I told them, and I had to find you guys though. But look what they also found. Dummy found an orange and a soda. 2 endings? Orby asked quietly. Now hurry up and find cashier and player. Dummy held them out and Q and Orby clanked into them. Ending. Orange. Please shut this damn orange up. Ending. Soda. Flood. I didn't expect you to flood an entire game, so I put the soda as representative of it. Oh wait. That's all the base endings. Well, cashier and player are slow, so you can join them. Hurry up and fix the damn game, slowpokes. I mean, I guess they were way too busy, like, I don't know, running away from random entities in that other horror game. 10. Wowee, the final chapter, yay. That took an hour to read. Now I have to go to sleep because, right now it's 9:30 and I have school tomorrow. It's only like it's only a Wednesday today, so tomorrow's a Thursday, which my teacher calls Friday Eve, but whatever. This isn't about my teachers. Wowee, the final chapter, yay. Player opened their eyes, being met with a familiar orb. Hiya, Orby said, floating right in player's face. Player waved awkwardly at the geometric shape. Don't know where Orby, Dummy, and Q are. However, I do know we're on the same game, Orby said, confidently, then looking at player's concerned but confused look, added on, yes, cashier is here too. Player smiled and gave 2 thumbs up, looking around. They saw stairs, traveled up on them, now on top of some sort of floating disc. They didn't care enough to really figure it out. There was a horde of people staring at some island in the distance, a tornado ripping through it. Player looked around again, looking for Dummy and cashier and Q. They saw Q floating above the ground of people. Q! Orby called out, making the cube run to face the duo and float over. Oh, that's where you were. I was wondering, Q states, simply looking at Player. You look traumatized. She chuckled, joking at Player's diswelled appearance from horror games. Player rolled their eyes and shook their head, looking around for their 2 friends that weren't geometric shapes. The tornado dissipated in the background. Cashier and Dummy spawning on the platform, out of breath. Cashier waved at the two, a big smile plastered onto their face. Last to show up again, player, Cashier said, poking fun. We're in a game called Natural Disaster Survival. It's an old game, according to Q. Dummy informed. It is. It was created over a decade ago. Q nodded. The best she could as a cube. Where are you looking for now anyway? We have covered the important base endings from your game. Q asked, curious. Me and player have been collecting parts of the breakfast machine. We're missing 2 bits though. Cashier supplied, as the 5 have been transported to the island and have been ravaged by a tornado. This time, there was a barn. People funneled onto it, and those that didn't funnel onto the other side of to either side of the barn. I see, Q hummed. Player and Dummy wandered inside the barn, and Cashier, Q, and Orby stayed behind to talk. Do you think getting all these things are gonna fix your game? Dummy asked, looking around the people-infested barn. Player shrugged. I hope it does. My social battery is drained and I need to sleep. Dummy stretched, yawning as it began to rain, sending Cashier, Q, and Orby running into the barn. That is acid rain, Orby shouted, shaking it off. Should have followed us inside from the outdoors then. Dummy chuckled, smiling. Let's just look for this damn scrap metal. Cashier said, grumpy as he turned and walked toward the hay bales, looking for a piece of the breakfast machine. Dummy looking on the other side of the barn from Cashier. Orby and Q looking up on the rafters, and Player the loft. They didn't find anything before they were teleported back to the desk, away from the island, which from a distance now looked thoroughly wrecked. Cashier used his time to look around the lobby, Dummy joining in as Player looked around the massive amount of people. Again, about a minute later, they had been teleported, this time to a schoolhouse. Small but well built, it seemed like. The 5 agreed to look around separately again. Cashier and Player sweeping through classrooms, Dummy through lockers, Q and Orby outside. This time, the disaster occurred was a flood, causing the 5 to scurry up on the roof of the building, now soaking wet. If you give me 4 or so minutes, I'll be able to send a pulse off and try and find it, Orby said as they waited on the roof. Dummy gave a thumbs up and Cashier nodded. That might work. Granted, we get the right map, he said. The group of friends were once again teleported back, not a disc. Player knew now, the tower. The 5 waited around, watching the island unload its current building and load in a massive house. The 5 yet again had been teleported to the island, now with a large manor standing on it. Player traversed through it, looking for the piece of metal. They went through rooms upon rooms, noticing Dummy had fallen into the pool of water in the back of the manor. They laughed a little at it, seeing how Cashier was obviously the one to push them into water. They had a notification from their armband and looked at it, reading over the message. It seemed like the round's disaster was an outbreak, so they had to avoid other people while looking at the metal vaguely. In the back of their mind, they had wondered if this applied to Q and Orby. Player looked under a bed and saw something glint against light pouring in the window. Their eyes widened and reached a number in their bed, straining to grab the metal. They felt their rough but round fingers brush against the metal for a few times before they managed to grasp it and pull the hunk out. They looked at the metal, smiling contentedly at it. They stood putting their metal into their pocket and looking out the window again, only to see Dummy, who was emitting purple particles, chasing Cashier around, yelling him something playful. Dummy looked in the water of the pool, glistening with the light, almost blinding them. That's so bright, they mumbled, a bit annoyed by its beauty. Cashier smiled at his friend, looking at the water also. But instead of shining his eyes like Dummy had, he looked into water. And that was when he seen it, a piece of the breakfast machine. Dummy, look! Cashier grabbed him to their gray friend and pointing at the metal. Is that a piece of the breakfast machine? Yeah, go get it. Cashier said excitedly before pushing Dummy into the water. Dummy fell in, filling their eyes before the surface yelling at Cashier. What was that for? Didn't want to get wet. Cashier shrugged, smiling at his friend, who spat water out of their mouth and rolled their eyes. Dummy dived down, grabbing the piece of metal and surfacing one more, giving Cashier a mental as notification, and the metal as a notification came to their armbands, informing them of the disaster about to occur, an outbreak this time. It seemed Dummy was the carrier. They climbed out of the pool, and Cashier immediately saw the purple particles took off. Come here, Cashier, Dummy yelled playfully, chasing after the friend. Nope, Cashier yelled back, laughing slightly as he ran to the soggy gray person. He ran for an entire round, managing to escape without being infected. By the time it was over, he was out of breath, but happy and laughing nonetheless. They were teleported back to the tower. They looked around for their friends, family. The thought at the back of their mind, and smiling, and proud to show them a bit of the machine. They walked close to the staircase, looking around, pulling the metal from their pocket and holding it in both their hands close to their chest. They found the two shapes, running over to them and presenting the metal happily. The two lovers seemed just as happy as Player did upon being presented the metal. Cashier and Dummy walked up behind them, and Player turned to show that the metal, which to Dummy he smiled brightly and showed Player, Q, and Orby that they, and Cashier also, found a piece that when they'd been following around inside the pool. Player gave a smile as big and bright as a supernova as the group touched the two bits of metal together and were transported to what seemed like a very void. They'd been a second their game broke apart. They seemed to be in a puzzle outline of their metal pieces, and the five of them inserted a piece in. Endings surrounded them as the machine glowed, piercing itself back together along the world before everything was pulling into an incredibly fast speed. And then a bright burst of rainbow heat exploded from the machine for a second. Player thought they'd need to do it all again. They looked around, the pieces of the world locking into place, switching colors as it found the correct one, sifting through data until it organized it neatly into its spots. Player looked around at his family, smiling as they watched in awe. Player smiled big and bright. Player touched the floor. Player let out a breath that they didn't know they'd been holding. I thought this was weird. Yeah. Player listened to the symphony as made their world fix itself. Player heard colors. Player heard data. Player heard everything at once, constructing itself to a musical piece of harmony that chaos combined. Player watched as the world would sew itself together in a colorful thread, taking care of it as it did so, moving into place. Player let themselves relax. Player closed their eyes, now peaceful and calm, and tired and ready for bed. To go to sleep and not wake till sunrise the next morning, to be woken by their father's cooking and nearly missing their bus to school. Player fell asleep. And that seems like about it. Now that was a great story, honestly. That was a great story, honestly, and I mean, it was amazing, honestly. I think I know what story to read next. But this took 1 hour and 30 minutes to get by. I mean, yeah. So yeah, I did not have any ships other than Q and Orby, which, I mean, honestly, if I think about it, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay to me. So I really enjoyed reading this. You probably didn't, but yep, I know this is the next book I'm going to be reading. Probably tomorrow. Yeah, I'll save it in my things, but for now, it's like late, almost 10 o'clock, which is kind of late because, I mean, tomorrow we have school. School is like at 6 a.m. Like, you go on the bus at 7. What did you expect? And, yeah, so that's it. That's that. Yep. I guess it's like time to go now.